This is your standard 8-track tape player. In this case, it's a standalone unit in a fake wood grain adorned box, but it's the same basic mechanism that was found in millions of car radios, portable battery-powered players, and stereo systems in the 1970s and early 1980s. There were better ones to be sure, but this is what probably 90% of all 8-track players were like. Just a basic slot through which you graciously shove in your 8-track tape, and it automatically starts playing, and you get one button to change the program with a loud clunk. So it works, but there's nothing clever about it. It's purely utilitarian. And one of the problems endemic to the 8-track format is that of head alignment. Because that head inside the player is constantly moving as it changes programs, it's prone to knocking itself out of alignment. And when that happens, you hear part of one program bleeding into another. As a result, many 8-track players have a hole in the bottom through which you can stick in a screwdriver and turn it to adjust the head alignment. Now here's an electrophonic 8-track player. At first glance it looks pretty similar. It's another rectangular box covered in fake wood grain and with a plastic face plate painted to make it unconvincingly look like aluminum. You get a slot to put in your cartridge and a button to change the program. Same basic idea, but it does have a couple of unusual features. One is that the audio output uses a DIN connector. This was pretty common in Europe back in the 70s, but very rare on US audio equipment. But if we take another closer look at the front panel, there is something very unusual about it, and that's this control here labeled Fine Tune. This has nothing to do with tuning a radio. Instead, Fine Tune is what they call that same kind of head alignment adjustment that we saw on the bottom of the Realistic player, except now it's right here on the front panel within easy reach. Another unusual thing is that the motor starts running as soon as you open the door. You don't need to actually stick in a cartridge like on most other 8-track players. And the radio theme is continued by giving you what looks like a radio tuning dial to show which program is currently selected. And as I change the programs, you can see what looks like a pointer on a tuning dial of a radio changing to show which program is currently selected. And if you look closely, you can actually see the position of both the program indicator and the head itself moving up and down slightly as I adjust the fine tuning control. So that's how it adjusts the head alignment using the fine tuning control on the front panel. Now with the help of this DIN to RCA adapter, I'll give you some direct hookup samples of what adjusting this fine tuning control actually sounds like when it's playing an 8-track cartridge.
I never meant to be so bad to you. One thing I said that forest make our way general broken day who fought the war behind the lines. Traveling in a fight at Combe. Someday, nothing at all. of mine, and there's nobody about. All I wish is to be, we'll be alright in the morning time.
That definitely is very useful to be able to adjust the head alignment right here on the front panel while you're playing a tape. But it really comes in handy when playing homemade 8-track recordings because they're much more likely to not necessarily have the correct head alignment on the recording.
Till it hurts. Take it
There are people dying. Oh, when it's time to lend a hand to life, the greatest gift of all.
Oh, Lord, like a child. As touch one. Till summer has no sun.
Well, needless to say, these homemade 8-track recordings didn't sound nearly as good as the commercially pre-recorded 8-tracks, and on some of them the alignment was way off, especially this one that had Queen recorded on it. So in that case it was very useful to have this adjustment, otherwise I would be hearing two songs playing at the same time. And I couldn't get this one to play at all, even though the felt pads are still good. As Craig Stark of Stereo Review magazine wrote in his Tape Talk column in 1977, "My files are full of reader letters asking me how to salvage jammed cartridges, and in my replies I've cited the words of an industry spokesman who once described the 8-track cartridge as a self-destruct mechanism. Sooner or later, the delicate balance between the front side and the backside friction of endless loop tape is bound to be upset, and every playing then tightens up the tape pack in the center until the cartridge jams." So that's likely exactly what happened with this one. Also, I noticed that even on the pre-recorded tapes, it's playing a bit fast. So let's open it up, take a look at the mechanism, and see if there's anything I can do to better calibrate the speed. Well, that certainly is a very solid and rugged looking mechanism made entirely out of metal. It has a very large AC motor, and the crazy thing is that fine tuning dial is actually a radio tuning dial. It has a dial cord on it linking the front panel control to the actual head mechanism where it moves it slightly up and down, as you can see. So they really did reuse parts from a radio tuner to make this thing. There's the circuit board with the preamp on it. It's all discrete components, no integrated circuits. And there you can see the other side of the circuit board. Definitely looks like it was hand soldered. There's the leaf switch, which turns on the motor when you open the door, which is a different way of doing it than most 8-track players. It also turns on this incandescent light bulb which illuminates the program display on the front panel. Now it's playing a cartridge, and you can see how the whole mechanism moves when I press the button to change the program. I was surprised to see that it uses a rather thin square belt instead of the flat belt that's common on 8-track players, but it does have a nice metal flywheel. The belt may be a little loose, but if it was excessively loose, that would tend to make it run slower instead of faster than it should. So in this case, the slightly fast speed, I think it's just how it was designed. Because with this AC motor, the speed is governed by the line frequency coming through the electricity supply. So there's nothing I can do about that. That's just going to be 60 Hertz no matter what. So the AC motor is always running at the correct speed. It's just a matter of the mathematical ratio between the motor pulley and the flywheel. That's what determines the actual tape speed on this. I cleaned the head and the capstan and added a drop of oil to the motor, and that's all the maintenance this thing required. But as for finding out the date of manufacture or even the model number of this thing, I'm having no luck. There's nothing obvious on the internal components, and the rear panel just lists the serial number and the number of the person who inspected it. For some reason they thought that was more important than the model number of it. I found this 1974 tape services directory. Here is Morse Electro Products Corporation. They had 2 automotive models and 67 home models of 8-track players sold under the Electrophonic, Morse, and Philharmonic brand names. Wow. So that's about it for this finely tuned Electrophonic 8-track player. A very useful feature, especially if you have a lot of homemade recordings to play. And besides that, a very ruggedly built and reliable machine, even if it doesn't look like much.
Nobody